So Ayodhya is where Ayodhya is. Then there is after that they cross a local Tamasa river. Even that small stream also there in the Uttar Pradesh. Right now it's there. So you can see a lot of civilization memory, like geographical memories from Ramayana continuing to even today. There are cultural imprints of that society that is got captured into Mahabharata and Ramayana. So if you look at that way, the Ramayana and Mahabharata both have the same, almost similar kind of culture, which is a bronze iron age culture. See, there is a lot of politics around Ravana, and Ravana is a Dravidian hero, and then Tamil should worship Ravana and oppose Rama. I've been totally demolished by my book Geography of Ramayana. So my result is that Ravana is actually established himself in Narmada, and he is born somewhere like little more northern on the banks of Ganga.
Namaste and welcome to another episode of IKS Changemakers, an Indica podcast. This is your host Shivakumar, serving and nurturing IKS Changemakers at Indica. In this podcast, we bring you people, their thought and their work, which is essentially Dharma in action through Indian knowledge systems. Our IKS Changemaker today is Shri Jijith Nadamuri Ravi, ex-ISRO scientist and author of 3 books on geography in Ṛgveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Today, we shall explore the subject geography in our sacred literature, his passionate research concern that has resulted in 3 books on Ṛgveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Hope you enjoy this unique exploration of our sacred literature. Namaste, Jijith.
Namaste.
Jijith, we will talk about why do you think there is so much geography description in our sacred literature. I want to have your view on that, having written 4 full books on this.
As Shivakumar has pointed out, actually there are 4 books. So that 4 books came about because the book on the geography of Mahabharata, there are 2 volumes. So yes, to answer the question, like if you look at, we had the temple culture that has been part of our dharmic civilization. But most of the temples are coming in the Gupta era or few centuries before the Gupta era. Before that, all our ancient ancestors considered the geography as the sacred kind of entity. So if you look at the Mahabharata, they were venerating the rivers, the mountains and the tirthasthanas. And they were giving the same sanctity that we gave to a temple. So that exact sanctity is what all the travelers, be it in the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, they give to different locations. So that sacredness of the space that has been in a later stage in an evolved Sanatana Dharma, we have transposed into the temples. So geography is very sacred in our tradition.
So that's very interesting, and that's important too. So in a sense, Bharatvarsha is a sacred space for us, both physically and in terms of thought. And you can see that, as you said, while you've written about these 4 pieces, in Vishnu Purana there is one entire chapter on Bharatvarsha description. It's a short chapter, but so beautifully calls out all the boundaries and explains why this kshetra is sacred. It even explains why it is sacred. Fantastic. So you already you kind of responded to my next question also, but you can further elaborate on it. How do you characterize the nature of these geographic descriptions? Of course, they're all sacred descriptions. So beyond that, what comes out strongly from these descriptions?
Yes. So having written the geographical book for both the Rig Vedic period or the Ṛgveda, as well as the Itihasic period, that is Ramayana and the Mahabharata, what I have seen, like the geography is sacred in all the 3 texts, but in case of Ṛgveda there is a lot of focus onto the rivers, And that is also why the reason why I gave the name Rivers of Ṛgveda to the first book instead of a geography of Ṛgveda, because it's all about rivers in terms of in the Ṛgveda. And you can actually see, if you, and especially it is expressed in my book, but you can actually see around 31 rivers which actually emerges as a cradle of the civilization. So Saraswati being the most important river, which gets mentioned like 100 times more mentioned than the other rivers. But these 31, 32 rivers are actually coming out as like mothers of that Vedic civilization. And in case of Itihasic geography, they have a lot of importance to the nagaras, that is cities, towns and villages. Janapadas, named Janapadas, etc., start emerging in the Itihasic period. And again, this is also because I have done a kind of lecture series of 1 year in the Amrita University on the rivers of Ṛgveda. People ask questions like, what about cities that are mentioned in the, part of the Rig Vedic culture? So one explanation is that because they didn't separate the city out of different than the rivers. And this trend you can see is, for example, there is a city Kabul that is in Afghanistan, but contrary to everybody thinks, this is basically the Sanskrit name Kubha, the river name Kubha, and the city that has grown out of that river like a child from a river has the same name. So Kubha river and Kubha city became Kabul river and Kabul city. So that was the tradition followed in the Rig Vedic period, where city doesn't have a separate name, but it's the name of the river itself. And then later on, we have bigger and bigger cities growing in the Itihasic period. So you have Ayodhya, which is like growing in Sarayu. So it has a different name, like instead of naming it Sarayu city, you name it as Ayodhya, like that.
So that's interesting. So so from rivers to places, cities, and Janapadas. That is how the name change, focus changes across different texts. But how does this compare with other civilizations and other texts? Is there any comparison with, Iliad and Homer, or other texts found elsewhere which are canonical or important for the other civilizations?
Yes. One thing I can see, it's like because I have also in the Ancient Voice website, which has a sister site called Takshashila, where I have analyzed the Zoroastrian Avestan text, which is like a sister to Sanskritam, and then Greek Iliad and Odyssey. Also, I have done the wiki format, just like our Mahabharata and Ramayana. I consider it as the same cultural expansion. Like I consider Greece as a satellite, culture of Bharatvarsha. So it's like Bharatvarsha into Europe. That is Greece. So there is a lot of sacredness, but there is no concept like Bharatvarsha inside in Greek literature. There is no sacred Greece. That kind of literature I have not seen either in Iliad or Odyssey, but maybe I don't know, in a later evolution, some other later text it may have, because my kind of experience is with limited to the Itihasas, that is epics of the Greeks. There is no such concept. So they have a lot of cities, but there is no overarching kind of a Bharatvarsha concept in Greek. And then there is the Sumerian civilization, which I have been looking at, because there is cultural interaction with Sumeria. Even in Dwaraka is a kind of port city, where there is a Sumerian cultural influence, which is I have mentioned in the third book. But then even there, they have the two rivers, this Tigris and Euphrates. But I don't see any kind of of course, there is a term called Sumeria for the entire, that is currently Iraq. But I don't see any kind of sacredness attached to the entire geography, the entire region, or the subcontinental kind of a region. Maybe that this is something unique to Bharata, that we have that overarching concept of Bharatvarsha.
So that's important, because if anything, in the 20th century and 21st century, the first casualty in our times has been the sense of sacred. So which means what has been a constant in our civilization for a few millennia, we are sacrificing at the altar of something that we are not even clear about. This is something for everybody to deeply reflect upon. Let's deep dive into each of the books. Rather, each of the sacred texts, what other elements from Ramayana? Subsequently, we'll move to first. Let's finish Ṛgveda and then Ramayana and Mahabharata. What other elements are striking in geography descriptions? What will come to conclusions that we can draw later, but purely what strikes?
So is it like we need to discuss the book wise, or it
Not
is
necessary, even the way you want it,
Yeah, so maybe since I put a lot of effort in like doing the sequence correct, because many people know that I started plan of starting writing about Mahabharata, but I ended up writing the book on the Rig Veda and then the Ramayana, because sequence was very important for me. So I will start with the Rig Vedic geography. So one thing strikes about the Rig Vedic geography is the kind of amazement that you see when you see that whatever you call of the Harappan or the Indus Valley civilization, both names are not good enough. So I have created a new term called Sindhu-Saraswati-Narmada civilization, because the entire area is completely defined by these three rivers. Of course, in that the Sindhu-Saraswati river system is the oldest one, and within that Saraswati is the oldest. So if you look at the entire geography, Harappan geography, or because for lack of some familiarity with other terms, I'm using that term Harappan, but it's very limiting term. But irrespective of that, the Harappan geography, which is starting from western Uttar Pradesh to eastern Afghanistan, is exactly reflected in the Rig Vedic geography. The easternmost river is mentioned as Ganga, of course, in the western Uttar Pradesh, and the westernmost river is mentioned as Kupha, that is Kabul river, which is in the eastern Afghanistan. So whatever the geographical analysis when you do on the Rig Veda, what strikes you is that this is exactly the material culture, that is the Sindhu-Saraswati civilization culture that you are actually seeing inside the Rig Veda. So they can automatically refute the kind of theories like Aryan invasion theory, and it gives a clear picture of that whatever is the literature culture, that is the Rig Vedic culture, is exactly the other side of the coin of the material culture, that is the Harappan or Indus Valley civilization culture. So that is very clear, and of course that because of that my book I use the terminology of Saraswati Sindhu civilization, and it's expanded because it expanded southwards. So Saraswati Sindhu-Narmada civilization kind of I use, and of course then the Ramayana. And if you look at Ramayana, there are two types of geographies in that. One is the geography contemporary to Sri Rama, which perfectly matches with the Harappan civilization, that is Sindhu-Saraswati-Narmada civilization culture, with its southern extension, because this culture expanded up to east of Maharashtra. So that exactly reflected in the geography contemporary to Sri Rama. But of course, because of the interest in integrating like the entire Bharatvarsha, that actually thought process started from the Ramayana onwards. We see kind of there is a post Ramayana geography of the entire Bharata getting added into the Ramayana. That is again increasing that the sacredness of the Bharatvarsha geography. And when you go to the Mahabharata, whatever geography that was actually confined with Sindhu Saraswati Narmada civilization, that expanded to the entire world, entire Bharata, and so that the total integration of the Bharata is almost nearly complete in the Mahabharata. And Mahabharata is again the third and the final book, or the third and final of the Itihasic period. Again gives, because the name itself, the whatever Veda Vyasa and the other contributing poets decided the name of the Kriti, or the name of the text itself, to be Mahabharata, which is actually a synonymous to Bharatvarsha. So to that extent, the Mahabharata is integral to the sacred geography of Bharatvarsha. So I can see the three phases of growth very clearly in Ṛgvedic geography to Ramayana geography to the Mahabharata geography, and the final was the ultimate, where the entire Bharatvarsha is well integrated into a sacred geography.
So this is from the standpoint of the terrain. Okay. So what you're saying is that I think the first point is very important, that the geography of Sindhu-Saraswati-Narmada, and the boundary being Ganga, that civilization corresponds to how geography is described in Rig Veda also. So that may not be an archaeological correlation, but at least there is it's not an archaeological evidence, but at least there is a correlation, between two different entities. So that gives credence to at least the speculation that the two are one and the same.
Yeah, I would go to one step and say that they are totally different itself is a kind of distorting that they have done in advance. Like something
So
like
that's why we have to fight it. Otherwise,
so
the
that-
natural conclusion would have been that they are the same.
It was like to subvert the natural conclusion that they are the same. That initially itself the people, the Western interest started saying that they are different.
That's
but
an interesting
exactly
perspective.
when you look at it, and it's not only the geography but chronologically. And the chronology I credit Srikant Talagiri because he has founded that the early Rig Vedic, the middle Rig Vedic and late Rig Vedic have a synchrony with the this faces, the faces, hierarchy
fascinating
faces,
read.
etc. Like that.
That's most pioneering read, I would say. Yeah. So this is as far as the macro narrative of the geography is concerned. Are there any micro elements? How are the mountains described? How are the people described? How are the flora fauna described? What other elements in the geography are described in Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Ṛgveda, and how does that compare?
Correct. So in the Ṛgveda, like it's not only just the geography and the chronology of the geography which matches with the IVC or Harappan or Saraswati Sindhu civilization. Even if you look at the flora and fauna of the Ṛgvedic text, so it mentioned about a lot of plants and a lot of animals. It completely matches with the Northwest Indian, Northwest Indian kind of environment. And again, this is also again the argument against the Aryan invasion theory or Indo-European homeland outside of India and the language coming to India. But the entire thing points towards the reverse opposite kind of a migration where like things started in India and it migrated, like not only people but even animals, like whether it be the bovine species, that is cows or the bulls. If you look at the genetical trail starts from northwest India to rest of the Asia and Europe. So that's about the Rig geography. And if you look at the Ramayana geography, I can clearly see the flora and fauna of the Western Ghats region, which is reflected in whenever they talk about Lanka or Ravana is going to bring Maricha actually to abduct Sita. And there you can see that entire scenery that Ramayana narrates. It's in the western coast. Of course, not necessarily Kerala, but the western coast starting from Narmada to southwards up to Kerala. You have coconut trees and plantains, and this kind of narrative is mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana. So Western Ghats. Anybody who is familiar with Western Ghats immediately recognize the Marija is from Western Ghats because he mentioned about Ramana finds Marija in the midst of coconut trees and plantain plants and so many other plants he mentioned is all about Western Ghats kind of thing. So similarly, there are a lot of micro. Ramayana mentioned about Chitrakoota, which is again I credit our traditional memory because it's still known as Chitrakoota. So that means that memory is carried from Ramayana to up to till now. Very clear description of the Chitrakoota mountain, which you can see the Kamatgiri, that is the UP Madhya Pradesh border, that Chitrakoota exactly it is mentioned. There is also the mountain is somewhat kind of a dome shaped mountain isolated from the Vindhya mountains. So there is a Vindhya mountain ranges which is starting from Ganga up to the Gujarat near close to Narmada, that entire big range. So it's several kilometers range. Chitrakoota is isolated hill which is little bit some 20 to 30 kilometers separated from the Vindhya mountain. Exactly that is mentioned in the Ramayana narrative. There is an elevated plateau near to the Chitrakoota, which even now it is the Chitrakoota airport. That also because Rama and Sita sat there and they could see the entire scenery from that. So everything is very clear in that.
So we already discussed and concluded that one critical aspect of geography description is that there is a sense of sacredness associated with it. So I think that's a foregone conclusion. Are there other features of geography description that we can draw. You know, do we see consistently detailed descriptions of cities, people, configurations, across all different texts? And in the detail, is there any pattern that emerges that distinguishes the way our ancestors have indulged in these sacred texts?
Yeah, yes. So one thing I've noticed is that the Ramas travel from Ayodhya to up to Chitrakoota, maybe one more stop, that is Atri Asrama. Everything is exactly according to the tradition, where the tradition mentions it. So Ayodhya is where Ayodhya is. Then there is after that they cross a local Tamasa river. Even that small stream also there in the Uttar Pradesh. Right now it's there. Tamasa river is there, and then move further, and there are so many other rivers like Sandiga, which is like a border between the Kosala and Kashi Janapadas, and after that the Gomati is there, and so many small rivers you can actually see exactly. And if you look at the Uttar Pradesh map or a Google map, you can see that. And then there is a place where he met Guha, that is a Nishada, and he is a friend of Rama. Again, that Varna system, everything will be clear that, because that is it's like everybody is equal kind of thing. And then that Sringiveripura is still known as Sringiveripura. That's slightly like we call it Sringarur, but it's almost Sringiveripura that we can recognize it. And then he crosses the Ganga and goes to Bharatvarsha Ashrama. And even now there is a Bharatvarsha Ashrama in Prayaga. And the Prayaga is also mentioned in the Ramayana. And then travels across a path, even including the distance of the path expressed in Yojana as well as in Krosha, matches with the current description of the like from Prayaga, this much distance is towards Chitrakoota, exactly it is there. There are two rivers, the rivers mentioned there actually, Malyavati, that exact river is also still there. It's a tributary of Yamuna, that is there. So you can see a lot of civilization memory, like geographical memories from Rama era continuing to even today. That's funny. After all the invasions, everything, it is still there. It's a matter of great, pride. At least that, because everything is exactly preserved in the tradition. And of course, like I have written in the book about the places which are after Atriya Asrama, that is, there are certain like disputable because there are two Sharabanga Asrama, there are two Sutishna Asrama. There the geographer need an extra effort of deciding which one of them, because tradition throws two variations of it, etc. But otherwise, everything is preserved exactly as it is. That's what I could see like that.
So, Jijith, you spoke of cultural memory. It's an important thing and a favorite topic of mine as well. But we'll come to that a little later. Let's just look at these descriptions from standpoint of knowledge. While the descriptions are interesting, of course, it is sacred, and there is a lot of detail, and the detail maps to specifics. But what knowledge can be drawn from it? That can be pursued further as well. Is there a way in which our ancestors thought of geography, flora, fauna, people, descriptions, categorizations that can be deemed as a knowledge system that can be furthered? I'll give an instance. In Vyasa, Vyasa describes different regions and then different characteristics of those regions and people, and say some are like this, some are like that. From that, whether they were truly that or not is separate, but how they thought of peoples and their characteristics comes out, and that stands in contrast with the way we think today of people. Does it come out strongly? Is there something? Can this become a knowledge system study also at some point in time?
So that there are certain part of the geography as well as part of the culture, that is the people, which actually can be part of the something like a knowledge system. One is that Mahabharata gives you a kind of a primer on the geography, where it describes the Kula Parvatas of the Bharatvarsha. So in the Kula Parvata system, Himalaya is not part of it. Of course, all the Parvatas to the south of Ganga basin, Indo-Gangetic basin. So you have a basic primary, like it's something like they start like a primary school. Geography, like the description start like it's a Sanjaya Dhritarashtra conversation, the Samvada of Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra on the Bhumi Parva, where it says that there are Kula Parvatas in the this Bharatvarsha, where the one is Sakhya, that is the mountain from Narmada to the Palghat Pass, and then Malaya, that is after the Palghat Pass. So Malaya Parvata is the southernmost Parvata, that from which the Malayala and then all the things came out. And then in the eastern side, this is the Mahendra Parvata, which is the eastern Ghats. So Sakhya and Malaya constitute your western Ghats, and in the east, that is Mahendra constitute your eastern Ghats. Like whatever you teach to the students, there is equivalent in the Mahabharata. And then the central mountains, that is one is the Vindhya mountain, which is like parallel to the Narmada to the north. And then where the Vindhya touches the Ganga, there is another parallel mountain to the east of it called Riksha mountain. So for example, the Jambavat is called Riksha, and they call Jambavat as a ape, this beer, but basically it comes from the name Riksha of the mountain. So not necessarily a beer, he can be a people who are living in the Riksha mountain. Then there is another mountain to the north of Vindhya, that is Shuktimat mountain, and from where the river Shuktimati is flowing, and it is Chedi capital Shuktimati. Again, I mentioned that river names as a capital name. Just like Kabul, you have Shuktimati as a river and Shuktimati as a city there in the Chedi kingdom. So, and then to the western side, there is a Pariyatra, that is the Mount Abu, and the western mountain that separate Madhya Pradesh from Rajasthan. It reaches up to Delhi. So this Kula Parvata system is something more or less we are only using the English terms today, teaching our students. So this is like an ancient knowledge system. And when you come to culture, you will be like knowing a lot because you read the ancient ways. I have put a lot of elaboration on the Bahlika culture, which is into the culture of the Punjab and then the Pakistan region, and to the eastern side there is Anga Janapada, and so where for example in case of Bahlika culture there are positive and negative. One is they continued the Vedic culture of Gunakarma kind of Varna system, wherein they say that one person in the family can become a Brahmana and another person can become Kshatriya, another become Vaishya, another become Shudra, like that. So they follow that tradition, and this is Karna when he is from the Anga, he looks it very critical manner, like saying that Shalya is from that culture. So there is something positive but something negative also, where the Karna says the Bahlikas they have a very loose culture. The women drink and then dance in front of everybody, all those things. And you can see if you connect it with Talagari's out of India theory, you can see from the northwestern region the European spread to the Europe. So they are following the same culture. So they took one part of that Bahlika culture, wherein you have a kind of I would say like is now refined like in modern Europeans. I don't blame it like that, but they have a little more kind of loose culture in terms of mingling of men and women, etc., which is exactly reflected in the culture of Shalya, which is mentioned in the like in the Mahabharata, Karna Parva. That kind of things coming out. So cultural differences in the east and west, people who are living into the west of Saraswati, especially like after the Parushni river, that is the India-Pakistan border, which is a strange thing that today it has become border of India and Pakistan. But even Karna mentioned the people who are living after the Parushni river, which is also known as the Ravi river, Iravati and Ravi river, they have a kind of a different culture. And so that cultural imprint you can actually see even in Ramayana. If you look at it is Kaikeyi coming from the Kekeyi Janapada, who have got this sudden change of mind and create troubles in the life of Rama. And again in Mahabharata, Gandhara, the Shakuni from Gandhara, which is again the northwestern region. So they have an importance to Artha compared to Dharma. That strikes out. So there are certain people, I mean, we cannot attach it with regions, but in a general trend ways, if you look at the western side, people are Artha focused. So they may even forgo Dharma for the sake of Artha. But of course, individuals can be different, and there may be similar people, individuals on the eastern side and good individuals on the western side. But in general, this kind of experience or a kind of pattern we can see.
So that's interesting in the sense that the word Kula being associated with Parvata itself is very interesting to me. It may be an indication that the geography around a particular major Parvata will be different, and that will anchor a different culture, and probably that's what is the indication. Is the word Kula also associated with rivers and anything else, or is it only associated with Parvata? In which case, see, that is a way of, that is knowledge system, because that is a distinction that they are drawing, and clearly stating that administration also probably was kingdoms around a Parvata probably shared a certain lifestyle and characteristics. So even if kingdoms are different, finally it belongs to the same lifestyle.
Yes, I will add, like for example, we in the Indo-Gangetic plain there are certain Janapadas like Kuru Panchala, which means they shared same culture and it's always mentioned together, but they are separate. Similarly, Kashi Kosala. So Kashi and Kosala sometimes they unite into a single kingdom, sometimes they are separate. They have a shared culture. Similarly, you have in the central India, that is Vindhya and Riksha. So that is why when we call the helpers of Rama as Riksha Vanaras. So Vanaras are associated with Vindhya and Rikshas are associated with the Riksha mountain. So it's something similar like Kashi Kosala or Kuru Panchala, you have Riksha Vanaras. So Riksha Kula, Vanara Kula. And the Vanara Kula is even like in the later there in the southern India, in the Chola kingdom, there are certain heroes associated with the Chola king. They are also identify themselves as Vanara Kula. So you might have seen the Pannir
So that clearly means that the primary key is Parvata, and then rivers are a secondary cultural distinction markers, and that may still be true. And if we carefully look at our life today, that may still be true, but unfortunately modern administration does not reflect this reality, because the boundaries are drawn totally based on other political considerations. That's awesome. So, but we'll now come to an important topic that we must explore in the coming years, and that is cultural memory. And you touched upon it already. So clearly, sacred texts, detailedly described certain aspect of our geography, and that has kind of remained the same till today. How do you think it has remained the same? Of course, we are kind of venturing out of the discussion on geography, but if cultural memory is associated with geography, then we have to reflect upon why and how that is so.
Yes. So I would again go back to my original point that kshetras, they were like, I mean, today you call kshetra, that means a particular building, and then in that puja is going. So it is like the meaning is temple. But earlier in the ancient period, like the kshetra means a region, and that is why Kurukshetra is considered. And whatever sacredness you attach to a modern temple, modern in the sense Gupta era onwards, whatever is there in the last 1,000 years or 2,000 years, whatever temples are there, that same sacredness associated with the place. So Kurukshetra is very sacred. If you die there, you get Swarga. That is the kind of concept they have. And then each of that locations, they are sacred. So Ayodhya is sacred. It's not just a political capital of a kingdom. It is a sacred place. Similarly, they have associated with every place, like even minor one like Sringiverapura, Prayaga, Chitrakoota. Everything is associated with that sacredness. So that is one reason, despite of diverse kind of invasions, still we are sticking to that place names even today. Like these, all names are not changed. Even in the, if you look at Mahabharata, Indraprastha is the kind of place. It's really like, I always think about it. Like Krishna has decided that this is the capital that I will help the Pandavas to build, because that time nobody cares about Indraprastha, right? Everything is Hastinapura. Nobody cares about this bushland to the west of Yamuna, that somebody creates a city. Nobody cares about it. But now India's capital is Indraprastha. The Krishna has established it, and Krishna, that you can see that the Chaitanya or that aura of Krishna is why we have, even after so many of inversions, we have Delhi as our capital. That is Indraprastha as our capital. So that is why Krishna is also called Rashtrapurusha, because he has established the capital of India, like that.
True. I think there is something significant about the fact that about how Indraprastha emerged, and in spite of several attacks, it has gotten restored back. Even the British moved from Kolkata to Delhi.
So what motivated the British to move from Kolkata back to Delhi? It was not a very big city at that time. Kolkata was a big city.
So, they may still have had a political consideration, but the fact that even for a political consideration they moved it to Delhi is an important thing. It's a point to be reflected upon. So, there is often a debate of whether Delhi should be the capital or not. I think somebody else has already decided that, arguably.
Yes. There is a kind of a Chaitanya there, which is like starting from Krishna, where he has decided that this should be the capital. And what Pandavas did, they were integrating Bharatvarsha. So once the Bharatvarsha is reintegrated after independence, naturally the capital becomes Delhi.
But finally they went to Hastinapura, right? After...
But what happens is that after the Yudhishthira ruled Hastinapura, it was Krishna and Arjuna who was handling Indraprastha. And after Dwaraka's demise, Krishna's grandson Vajra is established in Indraprastha.
So there is a heritage and a lineage and a legacy associated with Delhi. Wow, that's an unintended consequence, outcome of our conversation. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy that. We'll now come to your favorite topic, that is history, geochronology. Rather, it's our favorite topic also. Many of us have, kind of indulged in it in varied degree, but none with the detail, passion, persistence, and longevity as you have. From these geographic descriptions, what historical conclusions can be drawn? What cannot be drawn? So let's dwell upon that a bit.
So I have discussed about this in a lot of talks and podcasts. So there are a lot of bitter pills and a lot of sweet pills, etc.
No, I think you should explain what a bitter pill is.
Bitter pill is like something that tradition thinks is correct, but when you do a kind of detailed analysis, you see there are differences, etc.
And a sweet pill
is something where including tradition, everybody wants to be proved, and that is getting proved through this analysis. So it's like there are sort of minor steps where you are disappointed, but the end result makes you amazed, and it is in your interest. So it's something like that. So that's what I have done. So there is the reverse of Ṛgveda, which I did analysis, and I did the complete chronological analysis of the Ṛgveda from by sequencing the rishis and the kings mentioned in the Ṛgveda. I get the same result of Srikant Talagiri. So I have considered it as a revalidation of what Talagiri has discovered before me. With my analysis, I get the same result. So definitely the result coming out of the book Reverse of Ṛgveda is that validation of Talagiri's out of India thesis, and that people moving from northwest India to westwards. But I also, maybe a small credit for me is that I also see progressive movement in the northern direction as well, which I have mentioned in the book. So it's not only the northwestern direction, but the northward movement also is progressive.
That is from Uttar Pradesh to Kashmir.
But from the Punjab to Kashmir to the north of Kashmir.
Uttar Kuru and...
like that. So there is a northward progression also. The rivers which are in the further north, like the northern tributaries of Sindhu in Gilgit-Baltistan region comes last in the 10th, somewhat closer to the 10th mandala, etc. Whereas the rivers which are southern comes earlier. So Saraswati, from the north to south, if you look, Saraswati is a little southern river, and the northernmost rivers, that is Anitapha, and then such rivers which are tributaries, that is Trishama, Trushartu, which are like tributaries of Sindhu in the Gilgit-Baltistan, Ladakh region, comes last.
So that is another point against Aryan
Yeah.
migration theory.
Yes. So Talagiri's 3 books have mentioned the northwestern migration sequentially. Ganga is in the oldest mandala, and then you have this Punjab rivers in somewhere in the 7th mandala, etc. The third mandala you have Vipas, Ududri, and then Parushni and Asikni, that is Ravi and Chenab comes in the 7th mandala. So that sequence is like a northwestern direction. So I also supplemented with the northern migration also follows same pattern. That is oldest mandalas is in the south. Oldest rivers are in the southernmost rivers in the oldest mandala, and the northernmost rivers are in the youngest mandala. 10th mandala have the northernmost river. So there is a northwestern migration to the Afghanistan that is proved by the Ṛgveda, and there is a northern migration to Central Asia that is getting proved. Exactly proved by same Rig Vedic reverse sequenced in chronologically. So that is about Ṛgveda. Ramayana, it's a bag of bitter pills because as I mentioned, from Ayodhya to Chitrakoota, every stop is exactly as tradition as envisaged, memorized it. And the last one more stop is Atri Asrama is also exactly the same. From there onwards, you see there is maybe probably because of the Rishi Munis diverged into different groups or because of some reason, because I am not exploring that reasons now. There is 2 Sharabanga Asrama, 2 Sudikshna Asrama, etc., which you have to pick and choose. So as a geographer, I have started having some effort. Till that time, I don't have any effort. It's straight away whatever tradition mentioned. And then I could see the location of the Panchavadi, the exact slokas mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana is to the north of Agastya Asrama. So among all these Rishi Asramas, almost 90% of them was located along a river, which is called Tamasa River. And only Agastya Asrama was little bit southern to the northern foothill of the Vindhya mountains. So Rama, after spending 10 years, so this is also kind of a new information to the listeners. 14 years, how they Rama spent. So total 10 years is just he was circling across the Rishi Munis who are in that particular river. And on the north, one end of the river is Sudeshna Asrama, other end of the river is Valmiki Asrama. So during that period itself, he is familiar with Valmiki, but that part is completely missing. But only we came to know in the Uttaraganda when Rama said Sita that she expressed the interest in visiting all the Rishimuni asramas which they have spent. Then suddenly Rama says, okay, we will take you to the Valmiki asrama in the Ganga river, Ganga confluence of the Tamasa river. Then only you will understand, okay, in that entire transit of different Rishimunis, Valmiki was one of them. So all these things are there. And then if you look at that exact slokas mention is that Panchavadi is to the north of Agastya Asrama. But because the current existing tradition is pulling you towards Nasik, or there is an alternate location in Bhadrachalam, the Parnashala Bhadrachalam in Andhra Pradesh. So people typically get swayed by that later tradition and then try to somehow bring, even I also tried to somehow bring the Rama to Nasik, but it's never happened because after Agastya Asrama he is moving northwards. So there is a lot of differences from what tradition thinkers Panchavadi, what tradition thinkers Kishkinda, etc., which I have explained with logical reasoning inside the book. And then maybe I'll leave it to the readers to read it, because logically it is mentioned very sequentially, and logically it is explained in the book itself. And Mahabharata, there are no such surprises in terms of geography. It's straightforward whatever Vyasa mentioned about where is Delhi, where is Indraprastha. The Indraprastha is exactly there. Hastinapura, not changing the name, it's exactly that place. Even Varanavati, it may be a little bit difficult to understand, but it is known as Barnava now. It's the same. It's a Barnava. The Ba and Va so totally change. Pronunciation wise, Ba and Va are same. So Varnavati is also Barnava, is the same. So there are no surprises I could see in the Mahabharata. And now I come to history, wherein what I understood is
before you come to history, just to the advantage of our viewers. So what you are saying is that from within the text, there are multiple narratives that are emerging, and one seems to be contradicting the other. Is that how it is?
No, rather,
Or the text is saying something, but the cultural memory is saying something else.
so I would put it like this. In case of both the texts, both in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, there are information contemporary to the Rama and the Pandavas. So wherever in the text the information is contemporary into the Rama, that is the core VRM, that is core Valmiki Ramayana. That distinction I am making. And whichever is information contemporary to Mahabharata, that is contemporary to the Pandavas, I have put it like a kind of a circle. I draw a circle around that data. Basically, it's basically a circle around data. Basically, and when I say data, basically it's the information. It's nothing about it is not exactly about parvas or about adhyayas or slokas or about sargas or slokas or anything, kanda, sarga, slokas. So information is certain information is contemporary, certain information is later, because these two itihasas attracted a lot of later information because it was continuously being edited in the very late period. Some people would say 200 BC, some others says will be 4th century CE, etc. So I am actually not putting any such date, but one thing is clear: it has been continuous in evolution after Pandavas era or Rama era. So there are information that has get into the Ramayana and Mahabharata, including geography information. So then I have to make a distinction that what are the geography contemporary to Rama, and what are the geography which are posthumously added into it. So that there is a conflict between them.
Understood. So what is important is that tradition. All of us are aware that the tradition views all these texts
As a model.
only from a philosophical standpoint and is not worried about geographical consistency or later updates, earlier updates, and so on and so forth. So always this narrative will be in conflict with how the tradition views the sacred text. But that also brings me to another important question. So to what extent can we use these sacred texts for the purpose of historical dating? The very source, does it lend itself to that or not?
Yes.
That is an important question.
I think the very important question. So for chronological dating of the text, people have done a lot of different methodologies. One is the text itself gives you the astronomical positions, that is position of the planets, etc. So there is a new field itself, archaeoastronomy, which actually help you to date Kurukshetra war or etc. So that is one approach. Another approach which is not given much attention or much popularity, because chronology, archaeoastronomy is like a something like a Bollywood movie, everybody knows about it. Other thing is that there are cultural imprints of that society that is got captured into Mahabharata and Ramayana. So if you look at that way, the Ramayana and Mahabharata both have the same, almost similar kind of culture, which is the Bronze Iron Age culture. That is, a lot of bronze is mentioned, bronze based weapons and vehicle parts, everything is mentioned both in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and that is the common minimum artifacts. Because see, people say stone is being used by Vanara, so it should be in the stone ages, or somebody say that Hanuman is looking like a Neanderthal or a Cro-Magnon man. These are all correct, but you have to look at the lowest. Among all these connections, you have to look at which is the latest information, latest technology being used, not the oldest. So that way, if the bronze and iron are the latest technology that is being seen as used by Rama or the Pandavas, which means that you have to locate it in the Iron Age or the Bronze Age. So Bronze Age is little more older, like 3300 BC, and Ṛgveda is full about bronze. Only in the 10th mandala it started very rarely talks about something you think, even this is not confirmed, which are like Krishnayas, something like that, but more in the Yajurveda and Atharvaveda there is very openly talks about Krishnayas, that is iron, whereas Ṛgveda, unless you press too much, you don't see any iron. So it's more or less the Bronze Age. But in the Ramayana and Mahabharata, compared to Atharvaveda or Yajurveda or Samaveda, you have plenty of, it's almost like it's iron. So Earlier, the B.B. Lal, everybody have dated it 1000 BC because that was the time when everybody thought iron started coming in India. But now we have update of it is 2000 BC, and that is the information I have used in my 3 books. And it was a kind of boost for me, because it very well aligns with the Rig Vedic geography, which already Talagiri has explained, and I have just refreshed it, I would say. But then there is a possibility that is in 2020, I see there is a possibility of saying that there is a pure continuity from Rig Vedic period to Itihasic period at that junction of that the late Rig Vedic period and the Itihasic period. So somewhere around 2000 BC to 1700 BC, around 300 years, you have a kind of intersection of the Bronze Age and Iron Age. And if there is a possibility of positioning the Itihasic period in that period. So that's what I have done. So it's like a lot of positive news from archaeologists. Also, I thank the archaeologists to that I get this possibility of getting it into my books.
Yeah, in fact, I briefly touched upon it. The topic of history from our sacred text itself is a separate topic, and we should have one podcast on that, because there are several problematic dimensions. To what extent can history be drawn? What if it is violating a sacred dimension? Can such a conclusion be drawn, and so on and so forth? It's a completely new domain in itself, but that's a domain in which you are significantly working on. So I think it deserves another podcast in its entirety. But let me conclude this discussion with one important topic. We know that the study of geography has brought forth out of India theory, significantly presented by Sri Srikant Talagiri and then Dr. Elst and several others. That has posed a challenge to AIT, or invasion and migration theory. Are there other aspects of existing historical or civilizational narratives that get thwarted by this geography study that you have done?
Yeah, yes. See, there is a lot of politics around Ravana, and Ravana is a Dravidian hero, and then Tamils should worship Ravana and oppose Rama. I've been totally demolished by my book Geography of Ramayana. So that's why I said there is a bitter pill and this is a sweet pill, because you don't have. I mean, my result is that Ravana is actually established himself in Narmada, and he is born somewhere like little more northern on the banks of Ganga, etc. Some people are saying that large number of people claim that their ancestry is Ravana. They live in that Uttar Pradesh region and Rajasthan region. So even you have evidence in terms of people who are traditions which think that the Ravana's lineage is actually in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and I am proving it. That Ravana's Lanka is in the Narmada region. So he is basically a Harappan king, or a Sindhu-Saraswati-Narmada king, who is in the Lanka is also, it's not like a small island, it's like a kind of a Bhagatrao island which Dr. S.R. Rao has excavated. So you have Harappan civilization merging with the Ramayana, and the sweet pill is that it completely takes away the Dravidian politics. So yeah, that is one demolition happened. And of course all the things about the IVC being Dravidian, etc. I am myself a Dravidian, so it's not that, but it's being projected as a political narrative and trying to subvert things which I don't like. So that is put to an end with this.
I guess several other things will emerge out of it. Interestingly, there is one more book in the past, some 30-40 years back, which came to the same geographical conclusions about the terrain of Ramayana. So that is definitely something emergent, and obviously it's unpalatable to several other existing narratives. So let's see how that goes. So in summary, there are several cultural and historical narratives that can tumble down of this geography studies. So what are the future studies possible that either you would like to continue or you would like to inspire others to continue in geography?
Yeah, actually, I am split between like two paths which I have set for myself, because the Rig Veda, the chronology from Rig Veda to around the the grandson of Janamejaya, that is almost sorted out with the Mahabharata. That is, the trilogy has already sorted out. Even though I have sampled information from Vishnu Purana and other Puranas where the chronology continues with the descendants of Janamejaya up to the there is Udayana, who is a descendant of Yudhishthira, who is contemporary to Buddha, all the way up to contemporaries to Chandragupta Maurya, everything I have. So I have to like to strengthen that. Now it is only the sampling from them and then putting into the three books. But to strengthen that, I have to actually focus on the some of the oldest Puranas, which means Harivamsha, Vishnu Purana at least.
Yes, yes. Vishnu Purana in particular is rich in geography.
Rich in, and especially it also talks about Nandas, Mauryas, Sungas, even Guptas. So that entire continuity up to Guptas will be established by writing a book on the Purana. But again, I also, because now I have given priority to another book called Dharmic Grand Narrative, which is because many people now, because the 3-4 years I have focused on the material culture, people think that the dharmic part is left out. So that is what I am doing in the Dharmic Grand Narrative book, wherein whatever like things which are not illuminated from the point of Sanatana Dharma, I am putting it in that third book of actually fifth book, and that I am prioritizing. So between this writing the book on the Puranas and on the Sanatana Dharma, I am focusing on the book on the Sanatana Dharma, because as a sacred geographer, like as I mentioned, like geography in India, it is sacred. So when you give a secular or kind of materialistic understanding of Ṛgveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata, you are duty bound to look at the dharmic, giving it whatever you have left off in this particular geochronology that I am bringing it out. And for the anybody who actually would like to follow the geochronology, that is a new domain that has been created, I would invite, because the similar kind of analysis can be done for the Puranas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are
too
numerous of them, because Ṛgveda is one, Itihasa is two, but the Puranas are numerous. So you have a large number of people should be there who can actually contribute into that entire corpus of the Purana, which is larger than Mahabharata.
Absolutely. True, very true. So there is so much to be done. Not just the Puranas, classical literature too.
Yes.
Raghuvansha describes geography so beautifully. There is a strong correspondence to the Mahabharata geography in Raghuvansha and several others. There is really no book, and stone inscriptions. I mean, when we get into geography study in inscriptions, it will be even more interesting. So that's good. So it's a forever thing that we have to do. Thank you so much, Jijith ji, for joining us in this conversation. And like I said, there are several other controversial stuff that requires yet another conversation, and we hope to have one with you subsequently as well. Dhanyavad. Thank you all for being with us in this episode of IKS Changemakers, an Indica podcast. This week, we spoke to IKS Changemaker, Shri Jijith Nadamuri Ravi, on geography in sacred literature in the context of Ramayana, Mahabharata and Ṛgveda. In each episode, we shall bring you a new IKS Changemaker whose thought and work are essentially Dharma in action through ideas and concepts in Indian knowledge systems. Dhanyavad.